It may look impossible. People may look so hardened, but that was the same with us, was it not? People, don't be intimidated. Trust the Lord. Hold on to his promises concerning the fact that if you desire to be used of him, he will use you. If anyone is going to be called to the pastorate, they do need to be involved in some kind of evangelism. It's particularly beneficial for a pastor because when you're preaching, you're not going to know the mindset of the unbelievers unless you speak to them, unless you hear their point of view. So we do go out and give tracts on Saturdays. Most people don't want to stop, but thankfully, with prayer, we do get people stopping. We do have conversations, and people have come into the church as a result. I think that's such an important form of evangelism, speaking to people, witnessing to people, speaking about sharing the gospel with people on a conversational level. I like to do that because I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear their arguments. I want to know what their worldview is, because that will help me in turn when I'm preparing gospel ministry. In Chichester, which is quite an affluent place, someone referred it in the following way: cathedral syndrome, which you come across a lot of people who think they're believers, who think they're going to heaven, particularly elderly folk. Sometimes we stop elderly folk and they're happy to speak just very, very briefly. And just after a few questions, you discover very quickly that they have no saving faith whatsoever. They're trusting in their good works. They're trusting in their church attendance. They're trusting in the fact that they go to the cathedral or another church like that. And so that's alarming. You know, when you're speaking to the person individually, you realize that if something doesn't change, it's not looking good eternally. So we come across that a lot in Chichester. Of course, you get people from all different walks of life as well. You get people who are atheists. I've spoken to a few atheists. You speak to people who are agnostic, and you just speak to people who are just indifferent. They hadn't given this any thought at all. They're just carefree. They don't think about these things. So you get different types of unbelievers, different types of responses. But the prevailing one is when people do talk, so often is people think they're safe. They kind of have this cultural Christianity, but they don't know the Lord personally. They haven't had conviction of sin. So we come across that quite often. I remember speaking to a young man. Again, this is a while back, and I especially want more opportunities to speak to young people because, you know, the things they watch, you know, if they're watching Amazon Prime and these streaming services, you know, if they're watching these things, they're going to get a complete misrepresentation of what Christianity is like, what Christ is like, and it's a really bad. I mean, it's just deliberate brainwashing. So I've spoken to some young people, and I just give them some basic facts about the Christian faith, about who Christ is, and how he wasn't just someone who popped on the scene out of nowhere. No, he was announced. This was spoken of. This was prophesied of, and I just give them some examples. And I remember this young man. He was so shocked by this. He was so taken back. I didn't know the Bible was like this. I didn't know that this was all announced in the Old Testament. I don't know about all this wealth of archaeological evidence that you speak of. What you hear from the media is the complete opposite. And you feel for these people because they've just been deceived. They've just been led astray. So, and this is slightly off the topic. This is why I'm at this particular moment. I have a massive video project. I'm producing an evangelistic project about the Bible. And the whole premise of this evangelistic documentary, is there are divine features that make it obvious that the Bible is inspired by God. There's a whole host of divine features, and it's inspired by a book which I read by Arthur W. Pink, The Divine Inspiration of the Bible. So I'm busy producing that at the moment. It's going to take about another 6 months to finish. But we're gonna produce a corresponding track and make it localized, as well as other people can use it, other churches and so on. But we're going to have a localized track saying that this is a local film produced, and you need to watch this. And so we hope that will tie in with our track giving. But I really have a burden for that. people have this idea of the Bible, which is so superficial, which is so wrong. If only people knew how amazing the Bible is, how amazing the salvation is. So that's what we're busy doing at the moment. And yeah, so to get back to your question, there have been some significant conversations with young people and other people where you see their eyes being partially opened when you just give some facts about the Bible, some amazing features of the Bible, and Christ at the very center. I think we're more concerned about having conversations with people. Of course, we want to give out a good amount of tracts, but and even if you don't end up speaking to people, and this might be something that you're challenged with, and I would say don't be intimidated. Maybe you think, well, I struggle to talk with people and I'm nervous. Well, why don't you start off with not talking to people? Just give people tracts. Because even if you're scared to talk to people, you can give them tracts, and that can be a seed that will germinate maybe a month or years later. Who knows? In heaven, you might meet people you never met before, and they will say, "You gave me that tract 20 years after the Lord used it." So even though you may think I can't speak to people, well, you don't have to then. But do something for the Lord. Give tracts or so. That would be my advice if you see that as an obstruction. Moses felt that he couldn't, but later the Lord encouraged him, and look what happened with Moses. My advice is don't be intimidated by what you see. That's one of the biggest hurdles in evangelism, and that's why many people won't. That's one of the tactics that Satan uses. You're not going to penetrate my fortress. People are too hard. There's no use. It's very insidious. It's very subtle, and that's why many Christians won't evangelize. Another reason, I suppose, why Christians don't evangelize, they're distracted by the things of this world and their own lives, and they're not willing to make sacrifices to make time to serve the Lord. But I would say, another great hurdle and tactic of Satan is he makes it intimidating. But if God be for us, who is against us? And we remember that it's the Lord who saves, and he has a huge and a large heart for lost souls, and he's still calling out his elect. So if I'm furnished with that truth and reality that God will use me, he promises to use me. We have Bible verses that teach us that do not be weary in well-doing. We will bear fruit if we faint not. We take God's word at face value. We go out there. We're patient, but we believe that in due time the Lord will use us. So I think that's the advice I give. Don't be intimidated by you see. It looks impossible. It may look impossible. People may look so hardened, but that was the same with us, was it not? So I mean, there's other things we could advise people, but that's probably the biggest chunk of advice I'd like to give people. Don't be intimidated. Trust the Lord. Hold on to his promises concerning the fact that if you desire to be used of him, he will use you. We have our website. We have a contact page on our website. If people want to email me, they're free. They're free to do so, and call me. My number's there as well. Very happy to encourage anyone to reach out to souls, because it's a dying trend, sadly.